Multipass by the Canonical Foundation is just a piece of software that is used to quickly create Ubuntu virtual machines on any workstation. In this case, the workstation might be your laptop, and you may want to run Ubuntu machines on your laptop just to run some tests. So Canonical's Multipass helps you to do that, and it's also free of cost compared to alternatives like VMware. So in this video, let's take a quick look at what Multipass can do for us. There are quite a few reasons why you would want to use Multipass. Firstly, you can run safe, cheap experiments of Ubuntu virtual machines because it's a disposable virtual machine which does not affect your local machine, and it's cheap because you don't need additional hardware or you don't need to rent a server in the cloud. Secondly, you may want to test all your scripts and your programs locally before you deploy them to a server. And finally, it uses the native hypervisor of the operating system, which means that you're not dependent on third-party software like VirtualBox or VMware Station. However, you must be aware of a caveat. Since Multipass is provided by the Canonical Foundation, it only runs Ubuntu virtual machines. It cannot run Windows, Mac, or even other Linux-based virtual machines. It runs only Ubuntu. The operating system requires some hardware to run, and in this case it could be your laptop or a simple workstation, and Multipass is just a piece of software that's installed on your OS. As of the recording of this video, Multipass supports Mac OS, most distributions of Linux, and Windows. And Multipass uses the native hypervisor of these operating systems to create multiple disposable virtual Ubuntu servers. Let's first install Multipass. Since I'm using the Mac operating system, I'm just going to use Homebrew and enter my password to install Multipass. It will just download the program and install it on my machine. So that's done, and now let's look at what version we are running. It's always a good idea to know that using the version command, so it's a 191 version Mac at the time of recording of this video. Now let's also take a look at what options are available for the Multipass CLI using the help flag. And as you can see, there are certain options available for this version of Multipass. Please note that this may change based on your version. So first, I'm just going to launch a default Multipass virtual machine. And as you can see, it's creating one thing called Profitable Aureola, which is just a default name. And it downloads an Ubuntu LTS image. In my case, my internet is quite fast, so this happens really quickly. But depending on your internet, this might take quite a bit of time. So once the installation is completed, now we can actually get some information about this instance. So first, let's use the list operation. So we can just list the instances that we have, and at the moment we have only one, this Profitable Aureola, which is just a default name, the IP address assigned to this machine, the image that is used, which is 2004 LTS, and finally the name that is used is the 2-letter random name that is generated automatically by Multipass. So we may not want to do this for our instances, but just as an example. And by default, it always gets the latest LTS release of Ubuntu. So now let's get some more information by using the info command. The info command provides a lot more information about this machine. So it's info followed by the name, which is Profitable Aureola, or however you pronounce this. And now you have a lot more information about this virtual machine. So the IP address, and also how much RAM, how much CPU, how much disk is being used by this machine. So you can use the info command to get a lot more information about a particular machine. But we don't want this, we want to have more customization. So let's just close the loop and delete this. Multipass has the concept of a soft and a hard delete. So a soft delete is when you run the delete command, but then you can use the recover command to recover deleted instances. Then you run the purge command, which will permanently purge deleted instances. So that's kind of a hard delete. So let's do that right now. I'm going to do Multipass delete and the name of the instance, which is Profitable Aureola, which I can just copy from one of these commands above, so I don't have to remember the name myself. There we go. And now this machine will be deleted, and let's list to see if it has been deleted or not. Voila, there you go. So this machine has been deleted and it's not available for use. And now we can simply purge. this machine. Please note that purge does not take any arguments. So if you have a bunch of machines that have been waiting to be deleted, it will purge all of them together. So it does not purge machine by machine, but purges everything, and voila, so now there are no more instances found. So now let's look at how we can tweak certain launch settings to have a little more customization when creating an Ubuntu instance. So I'm going to check the help options for the launch command to see what options are available. So we can tweak many settings such as how much CPU the instance gets, the disk, the memory, etc. I'm primarily focused on giving it a readable name so that I don't get something like Profitable Oriole or some randomly generated name. And I'm also looking to use an image that I want instead of using the default LTS image. So once again, we are only focusing on the name and the image. So let's tweak that in our call settings to the launch command. All right, so I'm going to use a command here, which is the launch command with two options. One is using the name flag. I define the name of the web server, and then I use the argument, which is impish. So impish Indra is 2110 Ubuntu release. So I'm just going to use that name directly. You can of course use the full name, but Multipass recognizes what impish means. And it will now start a web server with this operating system. However, please note that you can also just choose whatever name you want, and also whatever operating system version you want. In my case, my internet is quite fast, so it's downloading quickly. Based on your internet, this might take some time. So now the web server Ubuntu instance has been launched. Now let's see if we can find more information about this machine. We've done this already before, so let's just repeat that. Let's list. And at the moment, we have only one Multipass instance running Ubuntu 2110. And you can also get more information by using the info command on the web server name, and you can get more information about this machine. The first thing we can do is to run some shell commands in our virtual Ubuntu machine. There are two ways of doing this. The first way is using the exec command of the Multipass CLI, where you just input your Linux command at the end. In this case, I'm just listing the root folder of the Linux file system. And this is one way of running it. This might be quite a bit cumbersome. So the alternative is to actually just run a shell session. So to do that, I'm just running multipass shell followed by the name of the instance. In this case, it's web server. So now we enter into a shell session into this Ubuntu machine, and now we can run all kinds of commands inside the session. So of course, it gives you this default greeting when you enter any session. And now you can run the same command, which is to list the root file system, and you see it there. And the interesting thing is that when you enter the session, the user of the session is Ubuntu, and the host name is web server, which is the name of the machine. So that's why you have Ubuntu at web server as your shell prompt. When using virtual servers, a common operation is to share folders between the host and the guest OS. In this case, the host OS is one of the following, and there's a location downloads share, and this needs to be shared with the guest OS, which is Ubuntu, at the point share. All that Multipass does is it creates a mapping between these two so that the download/share folder in the host OS, which is your laptop, is shared with the /share point on the Ubuntu virtual machine. So now let's see how we can share a folder with our guest operating system, which is the Ubuntu virtual machine. So first, I'm going to create a folder on my local machine, which is the host operating system, by using the mkdir command, and I'm going to create a share folder in downloads. Please note that the name of the folder does not have to be share. It's just an example that I'm using. It can be any name. And I'm going to create a test file, which can be read in both places so that we know that we're actually sharing something. And now this share folder has to be shared with our guest Ubuntu operating system. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to mount it on the web server instance. So there are no mount points currently, and that is what we are going to fix right now. So we're going to use the mount option of the Multipass CLI to mount this location, which is working directory with downloads share, to the location /share in the web server instance. So let's do that. Please note that if you're using Mac OS, you need to provide additional permissions to the Multipass daemon in order to do this. And now that is done, let's check if the mount point actually worked. And yeah, it does. So my local folder has been shared with the share location. So in my guest operating system shell session now, I'm going to see if, yeah, so now we have share that exists. And let's go into that folder and see what is there. It's so the same text file. And now I can read the contents of that text file. Just to complete the loop, I'm going to edit this text file in the guest session from inside the Ubuntu virtual machine. And I should be able to read the same value in my host because we're essentially sharing the same file. Voila, there you go. Another common operation when using virtual machines is to access ports on the virtual machine from the host machine. So Multipass creates a virtual network interface and provides it a range of IP addresses. This is called a subnet. And in this case, the IP addresses are 192.168.64/0/24 means it provides IP addresses between 0 to 255, so there are 256 possibilities. And the host OS has access to this virtual network interface, and so does the guest OS. So in our example, the host OS gets the IP address of 1, which is the last digit, and the guest OS gets an IP address of 5. So the guest OS also exposes this port 8000, which is our HTTP server. So in order for the host OS to access this, you have to just use the IP address 192.168.64.5 and use the port as 8000. So now let's see how we can access a server that's running on the guest machine from our host machine. So all Ubuntu distributions by default are bundled with Python. So currently it's Python 3. And Python 3 has a simple HTTP server, which is accessed by using http.server command. So now you have a simple HTTP server running that you want to access from your host machine, and it's running at port 8000. And on my host machine, I'm going to check the internet network interface using inet. And as you can see, you have all of these possibilities, and the ones that we're looking for is right here with the subnet. And in my previous example, I showed it was .5, but this keeps changing based on the number of machines that you create. So you just need to pick the address of the correct machine from the info command and then use the correct port, which is 8000. And as you can see, you get this simple HTTP HTML output. And this is not that great to use, so I'm just going to pull in a browser and then use that location from the browser. So we get a more formatted output. So as you can see, you see the text file and you have what's required. So this is a bit ugly. So what I just want to do simply is to create an index.html page so it resembles a nice web server, and the contents can be anything. I'm just going to Google a simple HTML document, and from the HTML document I'm going to just copy paste that directly. You can of course add CSS styling, it's all up to you, but this is just an example as how you can run a web server on this guest machine and access it from the host machine. So let's just copy paste this and restart the server. And on my browser, I'm just going to refresh this location, which will serve our index.html page, and voila. That's how easy it is to create services on your guest machine and read it in the host machine. So if you want more information on Multipass, you can just head over to multipass.run and you will find all the necessary information to work with Multipass. You have their docs, which has all the information that you need for different cases. And in case you have a situation that you can't figure out or you have some bugs, you can always head over to the discourse page and give some information there. All the information is available here, and Multipass also has nice tutorials on how to get started. Many of the things that we covered in this video is also documented in Multipass.